This is the Lekker Rugby Pod with Harry Jones and MV Welman.
Episode 30 of the Lekker Rugby Pod brought to you by the good people at Sit and Cars. How's it, Harry?
How's it, MV? You look like you're in an earthquake. Like tremors are happening. Trembling. What's going on? Where are you? This is not your normal pad.
I'm at my friend's house at Pretoria Boys High School. So thank you for
your wife kicked you out. Your wife finally kicked you out.
My wife said I can return when there's power. So then we noticed that the council working hard at getting the power right, and they tipped the crane truck over. So we're right back to square one. So we'll see how it goes. So Harry, just quickly, it might be the after effects of Hurricane Milton here in South Africa, but actually I'm sitting at the dining room table. So if the camera shakes a bit, pardon me.
It's the passion.
I'm going to thump my fist on the table. So there we go. Especially when we talk about the Bulls a little bit later. And talking about that, today we're going to be talking about the rule changes coming into effect soon. And we're going to take a look at the URC team, starting with the Bulls. We'll do one each week and see what these teams individually would expect from the season, what we would expect from them from the season. And then we're going to end off with an ode to Ox that was voted on by our viewers. I wanted to say the ode to Ox is from popular demand because your Cheslin obsession did exceptionally well. So people voted on this because to celebrate the fact that we made 250,000 views. So let's start the rule changes. First and foremost, why are they making all these rule changes? Is it World Rugby? Have they got their nose in for South Africa? Are they trying to neutralize the Springboks, or am I way ahead of myself here?
Okay, it's not the latter. The rules in some ways can help the Springboks. In some ways they can make the Springboks do something new. But there's actually not a team in World Rugby right now that can play more different ways than the Boks. So the other teams actually will be more negatively affected by these changes. So that's the first thing, is not to think about it as a more personal thing and so forth. I think the problem is greater than that. The problem is, even if we were not on top, we should not like these rule changes, because there's too much change for change's sake. I'm not someone who howls at the moon and wants things to go back. Everyone knows that about me. I like to progress. I'm always liking to understand things and analyze and move forward. And of course, want to make things better. But when you make changes within a legal system, so we call our rules laws, so let's go ahead and just call it legal. You want to always think about the hidden hand. The French economist, I forgot his name now, but he always talked about the unintended consequences and the vitality of working through those first before you change. And so World Rugby would say, but Harry, we trialed them. We trialed them in a very small sample size. Look, there were rule changes here that we didn't even know in the competitions that we supposedly trialed them in. We didn't even know that they were in effect. So because no one did a mark inside the 22 from a restart, for example. The reason is because it's a stupid idea. Best time to exit a 22 is immediately, not allow everyone to set back up. And so, and also sometimes you want to get a different angle on it, and there's just different ways you want to exit. So the World Rugby took a very, what I'll call, esoteric response to tremendous growth in the game. We grew so much. No, now we must find a way to grow more. Well, maybe you let the thing that was growing you go for a while. If I'm eating a lot of meat and milk, let's just keep doing that when I'm 16, 17, 18. Instead of going, we've actually talked to everyone, the stakeholders, these mythical stakeholders, and we're going to change your diet. And I would like to see what happens if 3 of the best games that were ever played in the history of rugby, the pool game against Ireland, the quarterfinal against France, and the quarterfinal between New Zealand and Ireland, let that take seed. Let the content creators, as we call ourselves, have free reign to pump that out like the NBA does or Formula One, and see what happens to your game if you celebrate some of the best exhibitions of skill, talent, the laws, and how the laws can be used or counter-used, like spy versus spy. If we keep changing every year and tweak, it does several things. Number one, it messes up your stats. So it's hard to compare things to things. Like, let's take maul meters, maul tries per game. We don't even know what it is now, because we're going to go, it's one stop. Then suddenly every maul statistic in the Six Nations, which keeps really good statistics, we could look back for 12 years and now it's like, no, asterisk. Remember, in 2024, they changed it. So, just wipe away an entire list. Secondly, diversity of play and how we play is super important. So if you're Samoa and you are the best mauling team in the World Cup, and it's part of why you get into the picture, you're underpowered, underfunded, but you can just focus on one tactic, or Georgia did the same thing, or Uruguay did the same thing. So stop talking about the big powers and, the big mauling teams being South Africa and New Zealand or something. It's not true. The best maulers in the World Cup were Samoa, Uruguay, and Wales. So, it's a way to play when you don't maybe have the back line. You don't have the kicker. You don't have the full package. So World Rugby does something very odd. It trials things in the Pacific Nations Cup, the Rugby Championship, and the Women's World Cup without telling anyone that they're doing it very much, and without forcing more of a discussion. Then it comes out and says, hey, we wanted to enhance your viewing and playing experience. We wanted to give you something that you said you wanted. And then you wonder, what's the process? Like who's watching and who's telling them that? Is it a worldwide survey? Is that scientifically done? And I'll tell you what the answer is. What it is they give stakeholders all one vote, and they dilute then what we really should be doing, which is talking to coaches about what they're going to do if we change the law this way, and be really honest about it, right? In a closed chamber session. So if you tell me if I tell you defensive coach that this is going to happen, what are you going to do? It's the held up over the line. Well, I'm going to teach my players to pull you over the line. If you get anywhere close on phase play, I'm on defending. The new thing to do is to tackle, passively roll, and bring you over. I want you to go over. I want you to come over when I want you to come over, and then I hold you up. I hold you up, not because I necessarily hold you up. I make sure the camera looks like I held you up by flooding the zone with bodies and you can't see, so then it's held up. Then I get to drop out. So all that work has come to naught. What does that do to the attack coach? The attack coach is, I don't want you to take phase play within the 5 meters more than about 2 or 3 times. And in fact, I want you to be short on purpose if you're not going to make it. So make it or don't. And what that does is it changes your calculus on whether you kick out to the 5 and whether you just take the 3. So you're working against yourself, World Rugby, when you have certain rule changes. And now if you say, I'm going to de-emphasize or discourage you from taking a 5-meter maul, because once you stopped once, and stopping it once is actually quite easy, you just flood the zone with bodies on the defense side. Then I've also made you less likely to tap and go, less likely to kick out to 5. What does it all lead back to? Take the 3. Is that what the rules set, the changes are supposed to enhance? More 3s? Next, you're going to have the crowd that says, penalties are too valuable. Cut it down to 2 points. I'm going to tell you right now, if you make penalties worth 2 points, all I'm going to do is infringe. Like, if you're in my zone, I'm just going to infringe, because it only costs me 2 points. I'm going to be more likely to kill the ball and slow things down. So we get back to the French economist idea of the hidden hand, the thing that you don't expect to happen. Always expect that to happen, because coaches are paid to win. They're not paid to make you happy. A defensive coach is not paid to make faster play or reduce stoppages. Maybe he wants more stoppages. So you cannot legislate your way to virtue. Show me a country that has 1 million laws about corruption. I'll show you a country that has a lot of corruption. Show me a country that has almost no laws about a certain topic. I'm going to show you a country that has virtually none of that vice, right? So it's actually very interesting. It's not about the perfect set of laws. A lot of countries have beautiful constitutions, and a place like Saudi Arabia has amazing amounts of laws about corruption, but they're super corrupt. And then you have another country like Iceland or something, New Zealand, Finland, and they have hardly any corruption, so they have one law about it. So I think rugby is falling into the trap of thinking that if we can just, keep tweaking the laws, adding laws, and talking to fictitious stakeholders. And it seems to me that they talk mostly to people who don't like our game. So it's like, they like our game enough to think about it, but they're not really dyed-in-the-wool, studied observers. And so they probably get things like, maul is unfair because it just, once you start a maul, it's just so hard to stop. That's not true. If that was true, we would expect expect so many maul tries, and maul tries are actually quite scarce. It's difficult to make the throw. You got a 15 to 20, 25% chance of missing the throw. You got to get to the ground safely. You cannot bind too quickly. You got to get the right people in line. You got to avoid that stop and that second stop now even. You cannot get sacked at the right time. Then you have to peel off at the right time and read the defense. Maybe you have a Malcolm Marx that does it in Cape Town against the All Blacks. But for every try you see by Malcolm Marx peel off, there's also a stop. Or there's the end of the pool game against Ireland where, the maul goes down and Ben O'Keefe says no. So the number of tries per maul, the number of maul tries as a percentage of tries scored, it's tiny. This just makes me think about that you're trying to find a problem to fix instead of just maybe simplifying the laws, like cutting down on the laws. We seem to be adding laws, and it's not a good idea for me. But that's my rant. It's not so, but I want to make sure people understand this. I'm not saying that you don't look at ways to make the game better. But every single thing I look at says that the way you make the games better is that when you, as a proper rugby fan, are sitting next to someone who's not, and you have to explain why a penalty happened, that conversation should be easier and quicker. That's the number one change we need is around the breakdown and ruck to have a much clearer idea of who gets pinged and why, so that there's not as many times where you'd go, well, I don't know. I have no idea why we lost the game.
That's a very important point because I'm at Loftus every weekend when there's a game there, and it's always so difficult. You see what's happening on the field, but you don't know because you don't have access to TV. You don't know what the ref is saying. You don't know what the team O is saying. So you've got absolutely no idea what's going on. Just a hand goes up and a penalty gets awarded or whatever. So we make a point of sitting right next to the TV and trying to hear what's happening on the TV, what the commentators are saying, or maybe hear what the ref is saying. Exactly what you're saying. If the rules are too complicated, people are going to switch off. You want to make the game more attractive, make it more simple. I think to me, that's quite an important thing that they're missing.
Yeah, I'd almost say and this might be too reductionist, but I almost might say, okay, what number of laws do we have with codicils, 23.22, whatever. Let's just cut 15% of the laws, right? So I wouldn't even consult stakeholders. I would get refs and coaches in the room, just refs, the best refs and the best coaches. Part of the problem here is they trial things and they have surveys where they have people who are not that smart or don't really understand the game. I would get the top people. I would get Andy Farrell, Rassie Erasmus, Ben O'Keefe. I would get the best minds in rugby as it's played today, and in the big games right now. Get All Blacks guys in there. Get Jason Ryan, who's the best maul stopping coach, and that's who I would canvass. I wouldn't talk to the assistant coach from Paraguay. And I would sit down and say, if you do this, do this. And then I would just say, find a way on all the major things, the things that happen 200 times a game, ruck, breakdown, the things that happen 250 times a day, a tackle, and get it down to 3 or 4 basic concepts, principles. We mock basketball and soccer, the two most global sports. But it's very simple. You actually, when you look at soccer and you see something happen, I think you actually pretty much know what's going to happen. And you're not sitting there mystified and go, oof, I'm not sure. His studs were up and he rolled in and, cleaned out the guy's shin. You all know that's foul play. Boom, done, finished. In rugby, we're well, the shoulder did hit the chest bone and then it clipped, and then we sit there and we become forensic biologists before we can make a call. And it's 2 minutes later too. So there's so many low-hanging fruits here that rugby could have gone after, but instead I thought they attacked some of the more sacred, parts of rugby where you want to have different ways to score and you don't want everything to look the same. And before I go any further, let me just say this. Repetitive phase ball is not that sexy. It's not that exciting to watch people just run into tackles, recycle, run into tackles, recycle, one-offs, play off 9, over and over and over. First of all, how many times can you do that from your own 22 and score? 0.01%. If they want highlights, of that happening, sure. You can always find a highlight one time a season where someone built phases 22 times from their own 22 and scored. But reality is you're not going to do it. So you need to have a mix of kicks. You need to have a mix sometimes of giving up the ball, contestables. Why did the Boks win the rugby championship going away? Because they regained 40 of their own kicks. How many times did New Zealand, Australia, and Argentina regain kicks that they put up? About 45 total between the three of them. So they were all at 15, 16. If you want to look at one stat and say, why did the Springboks break everyone else? It was they kicked the ball away. Yeah, that's true. But they got it back 40 times, and getting back a kick 40 times in a tournament that small is devastating. I would encourage that. I would encourage the cool aerials of a Lekker back going up and getting the ball back from a guy who's taller than you. How cool, how brave, how exciting. Make that more exciting. Make aerial contests between Kane and Moody and Chocobaris exciting. Publish the stats of those one-on-one battles. Like, is Will Jordan better or is Damian Willemse better at regaining the ball? Make that fun. But if your whole thing is to say there is righteousness in rugby, and the righteousness is phase ball, you must quick tap, free kick start, phase, that's good. That's righteous. That's heavenly. And the hellish, terrible, wicked thing is to have a maul, is to have actually set up a 5-meter scrum for all the marbles, and it takes 15 seconds too long. That's terrible. That we all go to hell, rugby hell. And then, basically all that leads to is everyone's shaped the same. It's all a bunch of loose forwards and centers because you just want people who can run quickly, reload. And, the scrum doesn't matter very much anymore. The maul doesn't really matter that much anymore. It's not that important to be really tall. It's not that important to be really short. It's just important to have reload. Damien De Allende, Bondi Aki, Robbie Henshaw. Everyone looks like, freaking the same. So to me, that's what's happening now, is that they're talking to a bunch of casual fans or fans from losing teams, perpetually losing teams, and saying, what would you like to see? And then it's just like an old man in a pub or your uncle in a chair saying things that are false. It's just too easy to maul a try over. We got to change something. And so then we get these. I know you're going to take me through all of them, but I'm not saying everything is wrong. I'm just saying I don't know why we're so incessantly tweaking when a lot of the things that people say they want are already happening organically. There are less scrums anyway. There's less lineouts anyway. The ball in play was already going up, even though that's kind of a stupid stat. A lot of the things people wanted, more people are watching the game. There's never been as attended a World Cup, both visually, digitally, and also in person. The quality of the play is demonstrably, empirically better now than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Yeah. So what are we doing? It's like if you had a person in your family that you said, I want you to do better, stop doing this, stop doing that, get healthy, do right. And then that person's doing that. And then you go, no, we've got to keep changing things. I'm not happy with you. It doesn't make any sense that we're disappointed in ourselves when we've managed to, I think, create one of the best sports ever created in the history of the world, and we just need to make it simpler, not more complicated.
The interesting thing that you mentioned there is you shared a clip this week on Twitter where for South Africa, I think against the All Blacks, and it was just a total mayhem. A guy kicked the ball randomly up in the air, and everybody tried to run for the ball. It was a nightmare. So there was a case to be made for changing laws and making things better. But when you decide enough is enough, now that's the other thing. You have to make a call and say, listen, you can't keep improving. It's now the perfect product. Are we there yet, or do you think we've now gone past that point of all these new, before even these new rules come into effect?
So there was 1976 All Black Springboks, and it was regarded at the time as being one of the great games, and people revere it, and they look back with romantic memories. All they do is they think of the best moments, right? So they're just remembering the few times that Gerrie Gemeses had a break and was able to run. But the problem with the game wasn't tight enough. It was too loose. There were too many loskakkels. There was too many, the thing was mayhem. And because they didn't... because the set pieces themselves were a bit loose, like lineouts were just a lottery. because the scrum formed too quickly and it didn't form very well. So it became like a little boat in the Southern Sea near Antarctica being swamped by giant waves. That's what the scrum looked like. And it would actually go down and then come back up without even disengaging. So it was horribly dangerous for people's necks. And it wasn't really as tight as it needed to be. So the space was actually erased. Scoring was actually a lot more scarce. The handling was terrible, let's be honest, because people didn't throw sympathetic passes, and there were not as many spirals. There were not as many, just spot on. Well, the accuracy was down. And so what happened was the changes were that people got better. But yes, there were some changes around the line out where you could just lift, because we always kind of lifted anyway. We just said, just go ahead and say it. So the line out became beautiful because now you had, two props lifting Victor Matfield up into the sky. It looked good. It was still competitive, but, the sides got good, clean ball. So those changes, sure. But that's a change that I think made line out simpler, because we just took what was already happening and we just said, okay, it's like, I don't know. Everyone's drinking beer anyway. We're gonna not have prohibition. People can drink alcohol. Okay, because they're already doing it. Yeah, sure. So it's the same thing with lineouts. These changes lately are all about this mythical person who likes some other sport better than rugby right now, but is open, supposedly. He says, if you just do this, this, and this, and make it a little bit more like, rugby league or more like the NFL, then I'll watch. I'm like, wait, the NFL is full of stoppages and the league is just repetitive phase ball that makes me snooze. Why are you talking to the guy who doesn't love you instead of me, your tragic forever love, who will love you no matter what? Why don't you talk to me? I can tell you things. First of all, I probably have a much more accurate description of what you're talking about. So if you say things about the mall, like, okay, I know what I'm talking about. I've worked with teams on malls. I can tell you what I will do if you change. If you say it's a single stop mall, I can tell you right now what I'm going to do on defense. And you won't like it. It's going to make your game less attractive. So I don't understand why they keep talking to people who don't know what they're seeing, unstudied, not sure they love us. They're just flirting with us, but their first love is some other sport. And this idea that we could, get everyone. Why don't you make the people that are already in love with you love you more by making the ref's life a little bit easier? Quite frankly, it's insane what they have to call upon. Stop relying on refs to, help us on the concussion problem. You take it on, World Rugby. You make the game more simple. You set down the laws and you make it clear that we are sticking with a certain constitution, which is constant possession for the ball, constant competition for possession of the ball, and a game for all shapes and sizes, and a game that does have the stop-start. We need the reload. Fatigue. But one more person says, I wish we could bring fatigue back into the game. Watch the clip I posted. That's a fatigue game. It looks horrible. It's scrappy. Half the guys are not even engaged in defense. I mean, it's just arm tackles, matador. There's like a few fast guys that can play all game, but it was not the spectacle that we saw in the quarterfinals in 2023 in the rain in Paris. It didn't matter what the conditions were. It was raining buckets, and they still made beautiful passes, wonderful attacking moves, and scoring is up already. So again, we're just trying to, it's a utopian impulse. If we could just legislate our way to something beautiful, it's already beautiful. It's amazing. I just want to see more of it.
Let's talk about some of the rule changes. The most important one, I think, being the 20-minute red card. And there's a lot of people saying that the South African victory in the World Cup final should be marked with an asterisk because of the red card that was handed out to Sam Cane in that game. Now, this kind of a new rule, if it had been applicable then, would have made a difference. Do you think it takes away the importance of the red card? Do you think it's sort of they're trying to, uncomplicate their own overcomplication when it comes to red cards? Because you're going to get a red card when the guy tips a little bit, like you mentioned earlier, and the likes. So now they're trying to sort of, yes, if we make a mistake, maybe we can mitigate it by, not letting them play with 14 men for the entire game, especially like a World Cup final. What's your thoughts about the 20-minute red card rule coming in?
This is an interesting discussion. There's an old saying in law that bad facts make bad law. if you focus on one incident and you try to make that anecdotally the paradigm for how you change, the system of law of assault and battery or theft or murder off of one anomalous, weird case that you're hyper emotional about, and everyone takes a stand and they start accusing the other one of being, irresponsible. And so you want everyone to walk free who kills, or you want to, be a fascist and put everyone in jail. It's not useful. One of the things about anecdotal law is you're not really making any good sample sizes of anything. So when you look at cards and the effect of cards, you should look at 500 games, 250 games, and look at the effect and the passage of time within it, and whether the teams were evenly matched in other regards before you can talk about the effect of cards. And one thing I'll say is it's without a doubt, because I've done that kind of analysis, is the card doesn't have as much an effect on two equally talented teams as you think. A lot of the stats are jaundiced and distorted by taking all games between all teams. And let's say the team was already up by 22-3, and then you get a card. It's almost useless. But on teams like New Zealand, South Africa, and don't focus on that game itself, but any game like that, number 1 versus number 2, number 2 versus 3. It's less than a point per 10 minutes effect, but there are other things during a game that also have that much effect. A scrum dominance, when you start getting pinged at scrum and the referee just keeps pinging you and you get carded, that is actually more damaging because it has more effects on your ability to handle any knock-on. It changes your style of play. Also, in the game we're talking about, there were other cards, yellow cards, so they kind of mitigated each other. There's a lot of evidence to where once a referee cards, they do feel a subtle pressure that the next time something happens that's even remotely close, they're going to card, because they don't want to be seen as the referee that changed the entire result. It's just subconscious. We do need a card in rugby to signify play that's unacceptable. We've called that yellow and red. Back in the day, you just got sent off, or you got a lot of warnings where you're going to get sent off. So following the principle of using continuity in rugby, we need to have those two levels, which we've called yellow and red. So that's fine. So far, we're good. We try to get away from intent as a defining delineation, a guiding principle as to whether something's yellow or red. I think that was our mistake. Our mistake was to say that it's more about the effect of an action. I shoot a gun into a crowd and I sort of magically miss everyone, and that's okay. That's better than if I'm just working in the backyard and I use my shovel and I throw it over my over and the rock hits someone on the head and they die. Then somehow that's worse than shooting a gun into a crowd. That makes no sense in criminal law, and we're sort of using that analogy here. Is your intent does matter, and I know that they'll say how can the ref divine intent? How can he discern that? Well, obviously, if I launch a punch at your face but I miss, that is still worse in rugby than a tackle gone wrong by an inch. But we got away from that, and we started saying, no, it's actually more about the head, contact to the head. Nothing else matters. Does your groin matter? Does someone grabbing you and pulling off your ear matter? These are all things that are foul. So I think we should have always kept sacrosanct the idea of foul play as the actual red card. Mm. And then everything else that was a rugby play, an intended rugby play that goes wrong, could be a yellow. So you've been too reckless. Hey, Skalkberger, you're running in a little bit crazy there. Your hair's on fire and you clip someone on the chin. That's a yellow card for me. And then I would reserve you don't get to play in this match anymore at all from now for the guys trying to gouge, punch, trip, maybe even say something incredibly horrible to the referee. I'd reserve the red card for that.
Right, Harry, next I want to talk to you about sort of a 3-in-1 package deal we're talking about here. The lineouts, the mauls, and the 50-22, which I think was a good thing. So you have a 50-22 successful, you get the lineout throw, but now you're neutralized because you can't, really use the maul. Talk about those three rules and those changes, like you talked about unintended consequences before. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I was thinking on my rant about the card, what I'm really saying is that when you think about changes, always go back in a way in your mind to see if there's continuity to the way rugby was played for 100 years as well. And then, yes, move forward in an intelligent way, factoring in human nature, cynicism, the unrelenting need to win. If you're a coach, you brought your family around the world, they're in a new school, and you got a contract, and now you're losing because, you're being too noble and, for the good of the game. No, you're just trying to win. So I think you always have to think about those things. And so just to go back to the card for a second, we carded so much because of the concussion lawsuit and needing to show that we were doing something, is now we created a rod for our own back, because we did depart from age-old rugby where being sent off was rather rare. But I think we still need a situation in which someone is sent off and they cannot be replaced for the rest of the game, because that's just more like what rugby was. I punched a ref, you got to go for the rest of the game, not be replaced. So straight red card. Then delineate between yellow and red on intent. And I think the similar when we talk about these other changes is, what are we trying to do? How can we match some history in a certain way? And then how can we sharpen our focus moving forward in a more streamlined way? So, always be moving towards a more understandable, but still rigorously contested. And on the asterisk argument about the World Cup, I mean, I'll just give you some advice. If you say that the Springboks didn't deserve the World Cup win last year, like, just go into the toilet, pull up, the commode, stick your head in and flush, and then come out and we can talk like reasonable men. Anytime you change anything in a match, something else can change. So there's no showing that if Sam Cane was replaced by someone else, that guy might not have been carded again or done something even stupider. Teams did adjust to tackle height better or worse. The Springboks were one of the best reactors to rule changes, and I have no problem thinking that whatever these rule changes are, that the more elastic, agile coaching team will adjust better to the various permutations that every rule change always brings. You change a law to try to create different winners and losers, and I'm a winner, and I'm diabolically clever, I'll always beat you anyway. I don't care. Just tell me what the rules are, and my twisted brain will find a way to win. I think there's a few things there. Anytime you have a time log and you have a conversion time, a scrum time, a line-out time, and you say, it is thus, it is whatever that is, this is fine. It's to me, it's always been strange to sit around and wait for 60, 90 seconds to kick, when in the rest of the game you have to, drop kick right in the middle of the game. Or if you're playing tennis, you're running around like crazy, and then you still have a serve clock. It's normal, right? The mark restart is one of the more ridiculous things I've ever heard of, which is one of the best plays in rugby, and has been from time immemorial, is the kickoff to a big eight or whatever your best carrier is, who gets the ball with a head of steam and smashes into the tacklers. And his ability to break that first two tackles, Dwayne Vermeulen or Kieran Reid or Artie Surveyor, it's super fun to watch. There's nothing about that makes me think it wouldn't enhance viewing and playing experience. It doesn't seem to me to make the game flow better to have an instant out of a mark that you then kick into space, and then you go into uncontested lineouts. This falls into the category of rules that I think were already that way. Refs are much more likely to call not straight when it's contested versus non-contested. The reason being that it's obvious when it's not straight, when there's two hands, two guys lifted, both trying to get the ball, continuous possession fight, than if no one's in the air and it's, over this shoulder versus that shoulder. That was already happening. So this is just, again, like lifting in lineouts. It's memorializing a fact that's already happening. So, fine. Protecting the number 9. I think everyone's in favor of not having people scragged too much at the bottom of a rock. It's difficult to adjudicate, and the timing of that. So I do think that's probably a good idea. So for the most part, that's fine. I do think when you hurry up a scrum set, you're going to have some problems. Like I said, the clip I showed from 1976 where there's a heaving scrum, that wasn't an isolation. I could have given you 7 from that same game where the fact that people were forming scrums too quickly created more collapses. And if you actually look at the data and the facts of our scrums in the last 5-6 years, we're not having as many restarts as people say they are. They're just saying that. They watch rugby back in the day and they just keep saying, well, it's restarts. Scrums are actually pretty well formed nowadays, and they're a good, clean thing. Yes, they are an opportunity for penalties, not just a restart. And what the thing I don't like about the rule changes, this is one phrase, improving game flow. They use that as a rationale. A maul that's moving forward is a game flow. That game is flowing. I mean, try to defend the maul and get in there and tell me that's not a flow. Like, your brains are flowing out your arse. So you're getting mauled. That word is cool. Someone's mauling you. It's hard to do maul. It's hard to get supremacy of the maul. It's hard to build a maul that goes more than 4 or 5 meters. I gathered some stats from Six Nations. Like I said, they have good stats. And you look at the maul tries per game. England, France, and Italy didn't have any in the entire tournament. No maul tries. Sometimes that maul was a feint and they could use it as an aircraft carrier to launch attacks. That's fair enough. But still, the best mauler was Wales, the worst team in those Six Nations. So why are we fixing this again? They had, 0.6 maul tries per game. And then you can say, oh, but you're just picking and choosing. No, meters per maul. The best one was Scotland, 3.9 meters per maul. That's just a good carry by Jasper Wiese. Like, that's all you're wanting. 4 meters. So one for the entire process of the Six Nations, the best you got from mauls on an average was 3.9 by Scotland. The worst was Italy, 0.2. They just didn't use the maul as a weapon. So what? So Scotland wanted to maul and Italy didn't. So what? Different strokes, right? And then you look at the median was basically about 2. So 2 meters per maul that you could gain. And why are we saying now you have to have one stop only? I mean, 2 meters with unlimited go forward, second stop, third stop. What's the problem? Maul tries as a percentage of tries. Well, England, France, and Italy was 0. But even the best, Wales, only a quarter of their tries were coming from mauls. So let's say you take that away from Wales. Hey, Wales, you had trouble scoring tries in the Six Nations this year. Now you can't use a maul anymore because you never score from the first stop. Wow. So now Wales is scoring 25% less tries. How is that good for the struggling teams? When I go to the World Cup and I see who the best teams were, a lot of the struggling, weaker teams were using that. Not all. Namibia couldn't roll them all. Portugal couldn't. But Samoa, Uruguay, Wales, and Tonga could. Georgia could. Georgia had a really strong maul. Tonga had a really strong maul. So you're taking away something from a team that might use a maul as a way to get in. You have to have more than one stop. If I know that I can stop your maul with one stop, I know there's a way to stop that. I won't even leave anyone off. I'll just say everyone flood in and push on that first one. You're taking away the kind of sophistication of the New Zealand maul defense. I think one of the teams hurt the most by that is New Zealand because they're really good at using this kind of method. Now it's like anyone can stop a maul if you just have to throw your whole pack in there immediately. And then the ref has to call it. So, overall, I thought this was a bad job. The good job stuff was inevitable, obvious, which is if you have a shot clock, make it shorter. And then I think, obviously, you do want to be able to have a TMO spot clear infringements in the final phases before scoring because it makes your game stupid if there's an obvious problem 3 phases before you score and the whole audience knows it and everyone on TV knows it and you don't use a TMO. The TMO is going to be gagged. That makes no sense. So I'm fine with that.
When is this coming into effect?
So some of these are almost immediate and some of those will be brought in with further trials. I'm not sure which one's which. But apparently so they'll announce it before the competition and they'll say, we are using, all the new suite or we're using part of it. But I think as early as these end of year tour, we're going to see some of this stuff happening.
I hope they do a better job of communicating it because I know from experience, the Curry Cup, the red card, the 20-minute red card rule was in place and nobody knew it. We actually asked the Bulls about it, and they didn't know. They had to find out, and they still didn't know. Eventually, they said they didn't know. And in that semi-final, Plumtree called his referee assistant or consultant, whatever, in Durban, and they phoned the match officials, and then they told them that the red card, 20-minute red card, is actually in effect. So, I mean, and hopefully they do a better job of getting that communication across. That seems to be a bigger problem than the rules at the moment.
It makes you wonder how the stakeholder thing is working. If the current best team in World Rugby, South Africa, with the most vibrant domestic scene and exploding interest in the game, South Africa, with the most levels of competition, Varsity Cup, Currie Cup, URC, Test Rugby, the team that is selling out even beyond its own borders, Twickenham, Perth, wherever the Springboks play, it fills out the biggest merchandise growth, the biggest brand building. If that group of people, if that stakeholder doesn't have a bigger stake and hold more weight in what's going to happen next, you're being stupid. I mean, why are you artificially saying that, Uruguay has as much to say in South Africa? It doesn't make any sense to me. It's not how you would run any corporation. It's not how you would run anything. You need to have the All Blacks guys, the Springboks guys, people from the French clubs. You need to have people who really are shaping the game and sit down and be real with each other instead of this sort of fake, concern. Like, I don't know, maybe the, women's rugby coach from Bolivia needs to have as much of a say as Jason Ryan about stopping them all. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. I'd want to have best and brightest subject matter experts, and cynical as hell. Like, tell me how you'll defeat this. Okay, so if I do this, what are you going to do to exploit it? Alex Saunderson from Sale Sharks, and let him tell you for real. And you go, okay, I hadn't thought about that. So if I do this, it's going to actually make the game flow worse. I'm giving you less options in the 22 red zone. So now we're going to see the same. And actually, when it's net, what I've done is I've made it more profitable for you to always take the 3 than to actually do tap and goes, because tap and goes from 5 meters out should be cool, but not if I can drag you over my own try line and hold you up every time. Yeah.
That's my next question. Does World Rugby have the ability to hold up their hands and say, listen, I've made a mistake? For example, this goal line dropout thing that you talked about, the ball being held up and everything, that's clearly not working. In the old days, you got over the line, the attacking team got a 5-meter scrum. That just added to the drama and the tension.
It rewarded you, yeah.
Exactly, but now it's just taken away. Like you said, now they've already worked out a way to counter it and use it to advantage. Do you think World Rugby can actually sit down and say, listen, guys, we made a mistake. We're going to change it to this. I think Paul Williams said, give him a 5-meter line out for argument's sake, the attacking team now, just to keep the interest alive. Do you think we're going to be stuck with these rules, in forever?
Now so we might not be stuck with the rules forever, but they're really bad at apologizing. They're really bad at saying we did something wrong. One of the most important things for World Rugby is to never say they're wrong. They will bless their actions with virtuous language. We were just doing it for you. We were helping the fans. And then you never know who these fans are, and you never understand how the process works. There's very little accountability. And it's very much a CYA corporation. And I don't like it because there's plenty of money now. There's plenty of, defining like what a really like strong, courageous adult man, woman is being able to say you made a mistake. It's not the end of the world. In fact, it makes me like you more. If you can just say, we got that wrong. It's okay. It really is okay. We know people make mistakes. That's a mistake. There are other mistakes too, but that's one of the ones that's the most egregious, because it does everything counter to what they're saying they want. It doesn't reward the attacking team. It makes you skittish about approaching phase ball into the red zone. So you're kind of working against your own self on what you say you're going to do. It's not continuous with rugby's patterns and traditions. And it's obviously cynically used. I mean, it's a coaching point now. If you go to any top club or varsity game, like that's what coaches are telling you. When the guys are coming at you and they're soaking you, they're destroying you, they're going to score. There is a way to stalemate them. It's like, if I can stalemate you on a chessboard, then it doesn't matter that I only have 3 pieces and you got 50. And that's weird. I mean, that's a hard one to explain to a casual fan or someone here in America that doesn't understand rugby. And I try to explain to them, they go, well, that doesn't make any sense. I go, oh no, it doesn't. It's rewarding very weird behavior. It's like becoming really passive, sneaky, and kind of in a way cheating. I'm dragging you over the line on purpose.
Yeah, it's cynical. I mean, we've been seeing clips. For example, Jaden Hendricks seems to be a master of it, of lying on top of the player on the wrong side of
Yes,
the ruck, so he gets penalized. To
I
me,
love
that's
Jaden Hendricks.
I laugh at it, and I like it, but I mean, it's cynical. It's not really. I understand the idea behind it, but now you're preventing the guy from. You should actually get the penalty because you're preventing him from rolling away. For example.
Yeah.
And this whole tackling thing, for example, the tackler is always in trouble, not the guy who dips. I know in Varsity Cup they had a bit of a trial there as well. I don't know why they didn't take that forward. If the attacking player dipped, then he got penalized. Don't know if you remember that. But it didn't work. They didn't take it any further. That to me made more sense because it incentivized them not to do something stupid, and it sort of cleaned up the thing a bit.
Well, it's a slippery slope, right? So anytime you try to judge things in slow motion that are happening in quick motion, that are dynamic, it's not being very understanding of the player's plight. I think as long as you get into a proper rugby position in the carry or the tackle, I think you should be okay. I understand the idea of yellow carding or penalizing something that's reckless or you didn't quite get it quite right, but these are empirical things we can measure. So the players at the top level are actually tackling more safely than before. So this is one more thing I'd say, pat ourselves on the back. Hey, good job. I do think the increased attention and some of that yellow carding really worked. What I don't want to do is dilute the ultimate punishment in rugby for disrespect, foul play, and intentional shithousery. I think you got to keep that a thing. And then I think what you want to do is hold true and firm to this idea that, like we always were taught, a low tackle is better. And yes, it's true. You can do an entirely legal thing in rugby and be concussed. You can die. You can get killed playing rugby legally. Just because our human bodies are not always designed to go into a tackle and get kneed in the face and survive. It's just a very dangerous sport. There's a certain amount of danger in a lot of sports. And ours is one of those. It's like downhill skiing can get you killed. And you go into it knowing that. That being said, our heads are our most important thing. So I do think that the attention around how to do that, you saw that the really diligent teams like Jacques Niedabert making it a mission number one was to make the Springboks play at a different height. It worked. It absolutely worked. I mean, young guys will listen to a coach. That's the bottom line. How do you incentivize the coach besides winning and losing? I think, carding does incentivize you. You don't want to be carded. It is definitely correlative to wins and losses. And I do think that in the end, World Rugby should think about a fining system. If there's a team that's over a season, for example, over an entire length of a tournament, if they are, two standard variables above everyone else, then that's on the coaches, that's on the club. I mean, I would think that's over 12, 14, 16 games and you're getting carded 16 times. There's something wrong with your coaches.
Before we talk about the URC and what we can expect from the Bulls this year, if you ever wanted to sell your car, but you were worried about selling your car in this climate, who are you going to sell it to? Are you going to be done in? Somebody going to rob you? Somebody going to do a fake deposit? You've heard all the horror stories. The better way to sell your car is to sell it to Certain Cars. Certain Cars have been around for more than 30 years. They have two branches in Pretoria, one in Gesina, one in Menlyn. And of course, their website, certaincars.co.za, and that is spelled CITTON, cars.co.za. Thousands of cars available on their website, but when you want to sell your car, you don't have to settle for the price you're being offered by the other companies offering to buy your car. We know that they don't often give you the best price. Certain Cars pays extra for your extras. They look at your car. If it's less than 5 years old, less than 100,000 kilometers, they'll definitely be interested in buying it, and you'll definitely get a better price from them than you would get from the competition. So like I said, visit their website, certaincars.co.za, or go visit their branches, Gesina or Menlyn, and make sure that you get a better deal. All right, we have a lot to go through still. Can you believe it? Let's talk about the URC quickly. We thought we'll focus on each team per week, one team per week, and we're going to do the Bulls this week. And you said, what do the Bulls need to do this year? What would their minimum expectation be? I know what I think, but what do you think?
I think it's very difficult to get into a final, and it's difficult to have the final be staged at your own patch. And so when that happened a year ago, then this year is win. You have to win. You have to win because it's difficult to find the right mix. It's not even about finding this player or that player 5 years from now that's better. It's everyone on the team was already there at the threshold of greatness, so they should be motivated to prove themselves wrong. I can do better. In almost every case I can think about, the player is 1 year better, stronger. There's not that many people at the end besides, say, Willie or maybe Marcel's, injuries and so forth. But I mean, in general, most of those players, 24, 25, 26, 23, who now have maybe a Bach taste, or they got to the final and lost, so now they know what it takes. They should be better. And then the new players, I think, demonstrably make the Bulls better in all those slots. You take a guy like Kubas Visa. So Visa wasn't really regarded as some massive blockbuster signing, but he's also the kind of guy who can be glue. And there's a reason why teams that want to get over the top sign a lock or a flank lock, a Courtney Laws, a Ox Nche from Munster to Leinster. These guys are actually really important to the toil of your team, the actual task driven. How many rucks can you hit? How many tackles can you make without complaining? How much you get stuck in? So I think Kubas is a good ad. He's starchy. He's really tough. I think he's the kind of guy, when you see him tackle, then it makes Elrich want to be even more physical. And once you go down the physical avenue, the physical road, it's fun. It's so fun to get fired up. I think Hanekom still has stages to go because he's such an athlete, and he's got ripped physique. You can look at his triceps sticking out of his jersey, but you could still see him adding 5. And if you had that kind of mentality of outdoing each other, especially with a quiet guy like Peter Steph Toy for the Boks, but Kubas Visa could be that kind of guy. Watch me get stuck in, outdo me. Then I think that's good. I think the loose trio is playing really hard to the ball. As our friend Ringo says, Rian Lowe talks about Cam having the loosest hams. I start calling him Ham Hanekom. He's really good at just stretching over that ball. I'd kind of worry for him getting injured a lot, but that's also strong. I think you look at a guy like Steenekamp, who, I don't know if it was the haircut or something, or just, special tutelage. He just looks stronger. So I'm a big fan of comparing year to year. And you say Bulls of 2023, Bulls of 2024, Bulls of 2025. Just sort of take me on this journey. It just seems like they have to win. And I think for you, as a monster dyed-in-the-wool Bulls supporter, you should be very upset and disappointed if the Bulls don't go all the way to the final. And then, it's always, a drop of the ball here, bounce the ball there, but they got to get back to the final. And then I think Jake White, the happiest grumpy coach in the world, will want to see is that everyone did a little bit better. If everyone just does 1% better, the Bulls win. And they're going to come up against a very tough Leinster this year. I don't think Leinster is going to fade this time. They've really intelligently filled some of their holes, and they're also driven by this embarrassment factor. So it's a proper ding dong battle. I don't know if the Bulls, if they get to the pointy end of the cup in the semifinals, for example, I don't know who they'll face. They face the Stormers, then good night. But if they face anyone else from the Northern Hemisphere, I kind of think the Bulls should be favored.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that quickly. Certain aspects of the game, what's going to work and what's not going to work. Attack, the Bulls were the best attacking team last year, scored the most tries. I think the most points were very close to that. The forwards are next level this year. The only player in that Springbok and that pack from last weekend that wasn't a Springbok yet is Kubas Visa that you just referred to, and he was actually in the 2018 Springbok group but broke his neck. So that should give you kind of an idea of the talent. The back line is full of Springboks. With Chamberlain seems to have taken a step up, seems to be thriving in at Loftus, with all these Springboks around him. Willie seems to be the new general. Jake is singing his praises to high heaven. The last thing that needed attention was the defense. Now, Gary Gold was never a defensive coach. Jake sort of, I think, gave him a bit of a helping hand when he was, let go from the Eagles in the USA. He's now got a proper defensive coach in John Teed, young guy but committed, and a proper defensive guru. For me, I think the Bulls have got all the arrows in the quiver that they need now. And like you said, now they need to deliver. And for me, I'd say, I know what I think. I think the Bulls have to win. You can't be in 2 finals in 3 years and not win. You have to get to
Yeah.
the final and you have to win it. Non-negotiable.
Yeah, because the drop off is so steep. When you project out 2 years, 3 years, it just happens. Players get signed away. Someone moves to Japan. Someone gets offered something from the French. It's just it's the way it is, you know. You cannot hold on to a group of cohesion for too long. So I do love the cohesion of the pack. And I think that you add a guy like Cobus Visa, it doesn't really upset the cohesion because he's not that kind of guy. I think he's just he's easy to plug in. And then I think if you look across backline, you look at a guy like Kanan Moody and you wonder what would it take for him to go to the next stratosphere. And the URC is perfect for that. It's a league that it does allow some holes in scoring. It rewards the attacking player, but I think everyone wants to see if he's a proper 13 and if he can lock down someone. So to your point on defense, that would be where I look and see the midfield. It looks good. It's early days, but if they can continue on like that, then difficult to stop the Bulls scoring. And if the Bulls can stop you scoring, it's a tough year for everyone playing the Bulls.
One last thing I want to talk about is the coaching. We know Piwin Lomlomu was the Currie Cup coach. He's a skills coach for the URC now, and he's actually traveling with the team and everything. And we saw also some quite innovative attacks. So like Willie playing number 10, doing a kick pass for Boeta Chamberlain of all people on the right wing, and he just romped home. I mean, that's the kind of thinking I would like. I think it bodes well. I think I am a Blue Bulls dyed in the wool supporter. Sorry, that's a long word to say. Live in the shadow of Loftus, but I think we're going to do it this year. I'm full of confidence. Thanks.
That was the second best try of the weekend. The best try, of course, was the Stormers' fake line-out move, which was illegal. You're not allowed to feint a detachment from the maul, but I loved it. It looked so beautiful. Second one was the Vili to Boeta, clean, inside to David Creel, running, untouched to score, no TMO necessary, just award it. It was a 4-second try. It was the kind of thing you think could be repeated a lot. And once you've done it a few times, now every defense has to look at that and go, watch out, Valiza number 10.
That's what I like the most. It's the Bulls that scored that try. Not one of the more expansive, more exciting running teams like your Stormers, for example. The Bulls are playing exciting running rugby. I love it. It's a good time to be a Bulls supporter, I'm telling you now. Not so much a Stormers supporter.
I think any perception of the Bulls as being, solid, stolid, dull, that's gone. High offloading team, a lot of points, excitement machine. I think it is probably a welcome relief to the faithful at Loftus to come and just see fun. It's a fun game. It's a good vibe. Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to say one last thing about people taking out Jake White. The Bulls are where they are because of Jake White. I think people don't understand how much that guy has put into the Bulls and how much he's achieved in the time that he's been there. Yes, he hasn't won the finals. Yes, but he was in the finals. I get upset sometimes when people really take him on and being unfair to him. Do you agree with that? Or do you think there's some merit to the fact that maybe he hasn't won those finals?
His whole career, Jake's had a polarizing impact. It doesn't matter. Talk to the people at Canberra, the Brumbies. There's people who swear by him. I mean, there's more people who swear by him and say he's the best thing that they ever had than people who bite his ankles. No, I think it's a way of delivering himself it's a PR thing. And I've joked about him being perpetually grumpy. I think Jake at his heart is a guy that doesn't like excuses. I think he was a teacher in his background.
Yeah.
And we all know those kind of teachers, the dog ate my homework. He doesn't like that. He just wants what he wants. And he holds people to standards. So if some people don't like that, then I guess they want excuses. I think Jake doesn't make excuses for his team or himself. Yes, he sometimes grumps, but in the end, he gets his teams, wherever he's ever been, he gets his teams into the finals.
Yeah.
Let's just say that.
And he actually said that at the press conference when they lost against Glasgow. He needs to go sit and figure out why he gets to the finals and he doesn't always win them. Or, so that's going to make him a better coach. He's going to come back a better coach. All right, it's time at last for the Ode to Ox. As you know, we've celebrated our 250,000th view on the Lekker Rugby Pod. I think we're quite happy with that. It's nice to have a bit of a community built up around the Lekker Rugby Pod. So, Harry, you've put up a bit of a poll, and the people overwhelmingly voted for Ox. You've written one, what the auto or the biography would have looked like if Ox had to write one. Let us hear it.
Yeah, imagine this is Ox Nche's autobiography a while from now. So maybe like an older Ox. Let's see. My name, Ox means we are blessed. And I am blessed. I made a promise to myself that my ears are not going to be like those other guys' ears at the end of my career. And look at my ears. They're still clean and good. I was born in Bloemfontein in 1995. And people say there's nothing to do in Bloem, but, there's a lot of cake in Bloem. Rooi vingergoed, Kukala Haas, Cafe, Queen Cake, Kapkoek. There's a cake shop around every corner in Bloemfontein. And for me, every scrum is a new cake. The quick ones, the quick scrums are cupcakes. And the long ones, we just keep slicing them. But growing up, I went to Louis Botha High School. Our chess team was better than our rugby team. Our motto in our team was, in our school was labor conquers all things. Labor omnia vincit. And I always liked to work. I remember even when we were waiting for the bus on Victoria Road in the Willows, I used to make dams from pipes which made the water flow in the gutters. And my dams were the best. Even when the buckies drove over them, my dams stayed firm. And I like to build things. It's why I think I studied geography and applied statistics at the University of the Free State. Stats tell a story to me. They're imperfect, but the imperfections are put into these messy metrics. And I love to put the complex into simple. The geography of a scrum, my head is the volcano. Your chest is the sea that I part. My feet are the forces, the plate shifting, the tectonic shift. Your arm, the peninsula, and I will make an island out of you. But my greatest honor in my career was beyond all the cups and the wins and the exaltation was the time when I got the honor of the nation, of the Tswana tribe. Tloto, Morafa, Wabaralong, Busaleka. The Baralong is the tribe within the nation of Tswana. If you are Baralong, like me, you descend from King Moralong in the 13th century. He was a warrior. He was a builder. He was a geography man. So in Thaba Nchu, the place they used to call Blesberg, Bald Mountain, I was able to receive that honor of a nation. And we Tswana are 7 million strong, 5 million here in South Africa. And we are the people that like to work. We like to build things. And I always wanted to build something of my life. So I am blessed. And I believe that everything that I've done has been blessed. And the most important thing is not about my cake. It's not about my scrums. It's that I always felt blessed and grateful.
All right. Thank you. Moving, as always. Just as an aside, Harry's done a Rassie first page for the next autobiography when he's now won the 3 World Cups in a row, back to back, as you referred to it. So I'm going to publish that separately over this weekend sometime. I'll just watch out for it. We'll publicize it. So that's another one to look forward to. And then, of course, Sunday nights, Confessions of a Rugby Fixer. Number 4 is dropping this weekend. Harry, it's going to be about your Honduras expedition. Tell us a bit about that, just briefly. Give us a bit of a taster.
Yeah, so when you face a problem, a gold mine that's shut in Honduras, and there's a Zika virus raging, there's tremendous civil war inside the country, and you have to solve a problem. Sometimes the only tool you need is your brain and an axe. So I'm going to take you through how you win on the road when you don't have all your creature comforts and you don't have your mom's mealie pop waiting for you in the morning. Everything you're eating, seeing, and touching is foreign, but you still have to perform on the field. One of the hardest things in rugby and hardest things in life is to perform on the road. So yeah, these confessions are working. I got tremendous response a week ago from all number of people. I'm not going to betray their confidences, but people who struggled with dyslexia or neurodivergent learning systems who are trying to get ahead in life. And sometimes they hide it. Sometimes you might have a coach that, doesn't read very well and has to wade through playbooks, or a player that just has a different way or something that's afflicting them. And I was really moved by the responses of people saying they were moved. And it opens up a channel inside rugby, which I think is really high overdue, which is how people handle real life. So I love it.
Harry's referring to confession number 3 that dropped this past Sunday, where he talked about struggling with stuttering, and how he's turned that around and made it work for him, made him win. So Sunday night, 6 o'clock, the next confessions number 4 will drop. Thanks, Harry. Interesting as always.
This is the Lekker Rugby Pod with Harry Jones and Welman.